My son's wife used his dream to steal $500,000. She never expected me to see the trap. Before we get started, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy stories about family betrayal, revenge, and shocking real-life twists, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the end of this one. Because this story isn't just about money. It's about a father who trusted his instincts, a son who trusted the wrong person, and a woman who thought she was smarter than everyone in the room. She was wrong. At 64 years old, I thought I understood people. 35 years in commercial construction teaches you a lot. You learn how to read faces. You learn how to recognize greed. You learn that the most dangerous people aren't the loud ones, they're the charming ones. The ones who smile while they're measuring your pockets. My name is Richard Bennett. And the biggest liar I ever met sat at my Thanksgiving table for 3 straight years. Her name was Vanessa. My daughter-in-law. The woman my son loved. The woman who almost destroyed him. The first warning came 6 months before everything fell apart. It was a Sunday afternoon. My wife Linda and I were enjoying coffee on the back patio when our son Ethan arrived. The moment I saw him carrying a laptop bag, I knew he wanted something. Ethan, I laughed. What? Nobody brings a laptop to their parents' house on a Sunday unless they're asking for money. He grinned. Maybe you're right. Linda rolled her eyes. Come inside before the neighbors think we're having a business meeting. 20 minutes later, we were sitting around the dining room table. Ethan opened his laptop, then he started talking. For nearly an hour. Custom furniture manufacturing, luxury handcrafted pieces, local production, online sales, corporate contracts, expansion plans, revenue projections. Everything. The presentation was impressive. Very impressive. But what caught my attention wasn't the business, it was Ethan, his eyes. I'd never seen him look so alive, so confident, so hopeful. When he finally finished, he leaned forward. Dad, what do you think? I looked at Linda, she looked at me, then I looked back at my son. I think you've worked hard on this. His face lit up. But I wasn't finished, and I think somebody helped you put this together. He hesitated, then smiled. Vanessa, of course. Vanessa, the financial analyst, the organized one, the planner, the woman who always seemed to have an answer ready before anyone asked a question. At the time, that seemed like a good thing. Now I know better. I spent another 30 minutes reviewing the proposal. Everything looked polished, professional, almost too professional. Then Ethan finally asked the question he'd been building toward. We need investors. I leaned back. How much? He swallowed. $450,000. Linda nearly choked on her coffee. I couldn't blame her. That wasn't a small request. That was retirement money, vacation-home money. Emergency fund money. Life-changing money. Ethan quickly continued. It wouldn't be a gift. It would be an investment. We'd pay you back. We've got a solid plan. I nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Disappointment flashed across his face. Only for a second. Then he nodded. That's fair. After he left, Linda closed the front door and turned toward me. What are you thinking? I walked back into the kitchen. I don't know yet. She crossed her arms. Yes, you do. After 40 years of marriage, she knew me too well. I sighed. Something feels off. Linda frowned. The business? No. Ethan? No. Then what? I stared through the window. Vanessa. Linda didn't answer immediately. That was all the answer I needed. Because she had been thinking the same thing. Finally, she said quietly, I thought it was just me. That got my attention. Why? She sat down. You ever notice how she watches people? What do you mean? Like she's calculating? I didn't respond, because I knew exactly what she meant. Vanessa was always observing, always analyzing, always one step ahead of every conversation. At first I admired it. Now it bothered me. A lot. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something kept nagging at me. Not enough to accuse anyone, not enough to refuse the investment, just enough to make me cautious. And caution had saved me millions of dollars throughout my career. The next morning, I made a phone call. My old friend Michael Ross answered on the second ring. Michael had spent 25 years as a forensic accountant. He loved financial investigations the way most people love sports. "Richard," he said, "what trouble are we getting into today?" I laughed. "I need a favor." "That usually means paperwork." "It does." He groaned dramatically. "Fine, tell me everything." So I did, the business plan, the investment. Vanessa. The numbers, the structure. Everything. When I finished, Michael was silent. Then he said something that would change everything. "Send me the documents." "Why?" "Because either you're paranoid," he paused, "or your instincts are trying to save you." 3 days later, Michael called me back, and the first words out of his mouth made my blood run cold. "Richard, you need to see what I found." 3 days later, my phone rang at exactly 7:12 in the evening. I was sitting in my study reviewing some old project files when I saw Michael's name on the screen. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. Michael wasn't joking. He wasn't making small talk, and for a man who usually treated every conversation like a comedy routine, that meant a lot. "Richard, what's going on?" There was a pause, then he said, "How much did you say Ethan wanted?" 450,000. Another pause, then Michael sighed. "Good." I frowned. "Good, because if you'd already transferred the money, this conversation would be a lot uglier." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What did you find?" "I heard papers moving." Then his voice became very precise. "The business plan is legitimate." I blinked. "What?" "The company exists. The licenses are real. The suppliers are real. The production estimates are reasonable." For a moment I felt relieved. Maybe I had been paranoid after all. Then Michael continued, "But that's not the problem." There it was, the part I'd been waiting for. "What is the problem?" "The ownership structure." I leaned forward. "What about it?" Michael cleared his throat. "The version Ethan showed you lists him as majority owner. 70%. Vanessa owns 30%. I nodded. "That's what I saw." "That's not what was filed." The room suddenly felt very quiet. "What do you mean?" "The legal documents tell a different story." I stood up slowly, double quotes. "What kind of different story?" Michael's answer came immediately. "Your son only owns 25%. I froze. "What?" "Vanessa controls 40%. My heart started pounding. "And the remaining 35% belongs to another company." I felt my jaw tighten. "What company?" Michael flipped another page. "A holding corporation called Horizon Business Ventures." The name meant nothing to me. "Who owns it?" Another pause. "That's where things get interesting." I already hated that sentence. "Tell me." "The company was formed 14 months ago. 3 directors, one is Vanessa." My stomach dropped. "And the others," Michael answered quietly. "A man named Daniel Mercer, and a woman named Chloe Mercer." I didn't recognize either name, but something told me I was about to. "Who are they?" Michael exhaled. "Daniel Mercer is Vanessa's brother." I closed my eyes. "You're kidding, no." "And Chloe, his wife." I sat back down, slowly, very slowly. Because suddenly, everything felt different. This wasn't just a married couple starting a business. This wasn't just Ethan and Vanessa building a dream together. This was something else. Something carefully constructed. Something hidden. Michael continued. "The company has authority over operational expenses, vendor payments, equipment purchases, consulting fees." I felt anger beginning to replace confusion. "So Ethan doesn't know." "I'd bet my house he doesn't." I stared at the wall. My son wasn't stupid, far from it. But Ethan trusted people. Especially people he loved. That had always been his weakness. And Vanessa knew it. I could feel it. Every instinct I had was screaming now. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Michael spoke again. "Richard, yeah, sir." "Yeah." I dug deeper. Of course he did. When Michael found a loose thread, he pulled until the entire sweater came apart. "What else?" "The holding company has received money before." I frowned. "From who?" "Investors." That word hit me like a hammer. What investors? 2 previous businesses. I gripped the phone tighter. What happened to them? Michael didn't answer immediately, which told me everything. Michael, both companies failed. My chest tightened. How much money? A little over 800,000 combined. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I finally asked the question. Were Vanessa and her brother involved? Yes. The room became perfectly silent. Outside my study window, I could see the sunset. Cars passing, neighbors walking dogs, people living normal lives. Meanwhile, I was discovering that my son's wife might be running a scam. A very sophisticated scam. Michael finally broke the silence. Richard, I'm here. I don't think Ethan knows. Neither did I. And somehow that made it worse. Because if Ethan were involved, I'd know how to handle it. Fraud is easy. Betrayal is easy. Business disputes are easy. But protecting your child from someone they love, that's complicated. Very complicated. After the call ended, I sat alone in my study for nearly an hour, thinking, planning, trying to figure out my next move. Eventually, Linda found me. She took one look at my face and stopped. What happened? I handed her the report. She read quietly, page after page. By the end, she looked furious. Not shocked, furious. She used him. I nodded. Linda slammed the folder shut. That girl used our son. I could hear the pain beneath the anger, and honestly, I felt the same way. But anger solves nothing. Evidence does, plans do, patience does. I stood up. I'm not transferring the money. Linda looked relieved. Good. But I'm not saying no either. That got her attention. What are you planning? I smiled. The same smile she'd seen countless times during difficult negotiations. The one that meant I'd already made a decision. They think they're waiting for an investment. Linda crossed her arms, and I looked at the folder, then at the wall, then back at her. They're going to get one. Her eyes narrowed. Richard? I nodded. Double quotes, just not the one they're expecting. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my role perfectly. I called Ethan, told him I was impressed, told him I believed in the business, told him I intended to move forward. The excitement in his voice nearly broke my heart because it was genuine, every word, every dream, every plan. He truly believed he was building something special. And, in a way, he was. He just didn't realize someone was building something around him, something designed to profit from his trust. Meanwhile, Michael continued investigating. Every day brought new information, new documents, new connections, and none of them were good. By the end of the second week, one thing had become painfully clear. Vanessa wasn't after a business. She was after investors. And my family had become her next target. Then something happened that confirmed everything. A Saturday night dinner. A simple family dinner. The kind that should have meant nothing. Instead, it changed the entire game because halfway through the meal, Vanessa made a mistake. A small mistake. The kind most people would miss, but I didn't. And once I noticed it, there was no turning back. As Vanessa raised her wine glass and smiled across the table, she casually mentioned a bank account that Ethan didn't even know existed. And in that moment, I realized the trap was far bigger than we thought. The following Saturday, Linda and I drove to Ethan and Vanessa's house for dinner. On the surface, everything looked normal. The house was spotless. Music played softly in the background. The dining table was perfectly arranged. Vanessa greeted us with her usual polished smile. The kind of smile that always looked genuine until you stared at it a second too long. Then, it started feeling rehearsed. Richard, Linda, come in. She hugged Linda, then me. Ethan appeared from the kitchen carrying drinks. His excitement was impossible to miss. Every conversation somehow found its way back to the furniture company. New contracts, new equipment. Future expansion. He talked like a man who could already see the future. And that future looked bright. Watching him made what I knew even harder. Because he wasn't lying. He wasn't manipulating anyone. He was simply believing the wrong person. Dinner started pleasantly enough. For nearly an hour, we talked about everything except business, vacations, family, sports, neighborhood gossip, normal things. Then Vanessa made her mistake. It happened so quickly that nobody else noticed. Not Ethan, not Linda, just me. And the moment the words left her mouth, I saw it. Ethan was discussing equipment financing, talking about future manufacturing costs. Vanessa smiled and casually said, "At least the reserve account gives us flexibility." The sentence sounded harmless, except for one thing. Ethan looked confused. Only for a second, but I caught it. "What reserve account?" he asked. Vanessa answered immediately, too quickly. "The operational reserve." "Oh," he nodded. Then moved on. But I didn't. Because Ethan's reaction told me something important. He had no idea what account she was talking about. A husband involved in every aspect of a startup should know every account, every dollar, every expense. Yet for a split second, he looked completely lost. Vanessa noticed me watching. For the first time all evening, her smile faltered, just slightly. Then it returned, smooth, controlled, professional. But the damage was already done. I spent the rest of dinner observing, listening, waiting, and the more I watched, the more uncomfortable I became. Vanessa answered financial questions before Ethan could. Vanessa redirected conversations whenever details came up. Vanessa controlled every discussion involving money. It wasn't obvious, not enough for anyone else to question it. But once you noticed it, you couldn't stop seeing it. After dessert, Ethan stepped outside to answer a phone call. The moment he left, Vanessa turned toward me. Her expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Like someone switching masks. "Have you had time to think about the investment?" There it was, direct, focused, no small talk, no pretending, just business. I smiled politely. "I'm still reviewing everything." For the first time, I saw irritation flash across her face. Gone almost instantly. But it was there. "We're getting close to some major deadlines." "I'm aware," she nodded. "Of course." Then she lowered her voice. "The sooner the funds arrive, the faster Ethan can focus on growth." Double quotes. Interesting. Not the company. Not the employees. Not the future. Ethan. She always knew exactly which emotional button to press. I simply nodded. "I understand." A few minutes later, Linda and I left. The entire drive home was silent. Until finally Linda spoke. "You saw it too." I glanced at her. "The reserve account." She nodded. That wasn't normal. No. We drove another mile. Then I said something I hadn't admitted out loud before. "I think she's getting nervous." Linda looked surprised. "Why?" "Because people become impatient when plans start slipping." "And if she's impatient?" I let the sentence hang. Linda finished it. "She's afraid." Exactly. For weeks, Vanessa had been confident, in control. But tonight felt different. Tonight she looked like someone waiting for something. Or someone worried that something wasn't happening. And I intended to find out which. The next morning, Michael called. I told him about the dinner. The reserve account. Ethan's reaction. Everything. When I finished, Michael was quiet. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny, because he'd found something. "What? You aren't going to believe this." I already hated hearing that. "Try me." "The reserve account exists." I froze. "What? It exists?" "Under Horizon Business Ventures." My pulse quickened. "How much is in it?" Michael exhaled. "Not much." "Then why create it?" Another pause. Then came the answer. "It isn't designed to hold money." "What is it designed for?" Michael's voice became serious. "Receiving money." Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. "Explain." The account was established specifically to accept large outside investments. I stood up from my desk, slowly, "How many investments?" "Potentially dozens." I felt a chill run through my body. This wasn't about one scam. This wasn't about one business. This was a system. A machine, designed to attract investors, move money, and make it disappear. "What else did you find?" Michael sighed. "Richard, tell me." The paperwork references a future capital injection. I frowned. What does that mean? It means someone expected a major investor. Immediately, I knew who.me. They'd already planned for my money. Long before I agreed to invest, long before Ethan even asked. My jaw tightened. They were counting on me. Michael didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew it was true. Then he said something that changed everything. There might be another victim. The room suddenly felt cold. What victim? A retired surgeon. I stared at the wall. How much? 300,000. My stomach dropped. Did he invest? Yes. What happened? Silence. Then Michael answered. He never got his money back. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about protecting my family. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. This woman had done this before. Other people had suffered. Other families, other retirees, other parents trying to help their children. And now my son was standing in the middle of it. Without even realizing it. That was the moment my objective changed. I wasn't trying to stop a scam anymore. I was trying to expose one completely. 3 days later, my attorney, James Holloway, called me into his office. James had handled my legal affairs for over 20 years. He wasn't emotional, he wasn't dramatic, and he definitely wasn't easily impressed. Yet when I handed him Michael's report, he spent nearly an hour reading in silence. Finally, he looked up. This is worse than I expected. I nodded. I know. James closed the folder. Do Ethan and Vanessa know you're investigating? No. Good. Why? He leaned back. Because the moment they know, everything changes. What do you recommend? His answer came immediately. Escrow. I smiled. Exactly what I'd been thinking. The money would appear available, but nobody could touch it. Not without verification, not without scrutiny, not without exposing themselves first. James nodded. Let them think they're winning. I smiled. The same smile Linda always worried about. That's the plan. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanessa Dot for the first time. She wasn't calling to chat. She wasn't calling to be friendly. She was calling because she wanted an answer. And I knew exactly what she was going to ask. The moment I answered, Vanessa skipped the small talk and asked one question. Richard, when exactly are you transferring the money? What happened during that phone call confirmed every suspicion I'd had from the beginning. 3 days after meeting with James, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Vanessa. I wasn't surprised. People become impatient when their plans depend on someone else's money. And according to everything Michael had uncovered, Vanessa's entire strategy depended on one thing. Me wiring nearly $500,000. I let the phone ring twice before answering, double quotes. Hello, Vanessa. Her voice was warm, almost too warm. Richard, I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. How are you, and Linda? We're doing well. A few seconds of harmless conversation followed. The weather, the business. The usual performance. Then she finally arrived at the real reason she called. Richard, there it was. The tone, the one people use when they're trying to sound casual while discussing something very important. Yes, we've started receiving invoices for some of the new equipment. I see. And I was just wondering if you've decided about the investment transfer. Straight to the point, no more pretending. I smiled. Even though she couldn't see it. As a matter of fact, I have silence. A brief one but noticeable. Then she asked, and it's been handled. The line went completely quiet, not relieved, not grateful, just quiet. I waited. Finally she spoke. Handled, yes. The funds have already been placed where they need to be. Another pause, longer this time, far longer than it should have been. If she was simply waiting for an investment, she would have been happy. Instead, she sounded confused. Almost alarmed. What account did you send it to? There it was, the question. Not thank you, not that's wonderful. Not even when, just, what account? I leaned back in my chair. James handled everything. James, my attorney. The temperature of the conversation changed instantly. Not dramatically, but enough. I could hear it. The careful control, The hidden concern. Oh, I continued. He set everything up according to the investment agreement. More silence then. Could you send me the account information? I smiled again. No need. Another pause. Why not? Because James already has everything documented. The silence that followed told me more than any investigation ever could. For several seconds she said absolutely nothing. And that silence confirmed one thing. She wasn't looking for reassurance. She was looking for access. Eventually, she recovered. Quickly, she always recovered quickly. Of course, a small laugh. I just wanted to make sure our bookkeeping department had the correct information. Bookkeeping department. Interesting. A month earlier, she would have said we. Now she was hiding behind departments. Distance. Professional language. Deflection. All signs of stress. I understand. She cleared her throat. Could you have James contact me? He'll be expecting your call. The moment I said that, everything changed. Because now she knew there was a lawyer involved. A lawyer meant documentation. Verification. Paper trails. The exact things scammers hate most. The rest of the conversation lasted less than a minute. Then she hung up. I stared at my phone and waited. Exactly 57 minutes later, James called. I answered immediately. That was fast. It was, how'd it go? James chuckled. Your daughter-in-law isn't happy. I sat forward. Tell me. She wanted immediate access to the funds. Of course she did. I explained that the money is being held in escrow until ownership verification is complete. I smiled. How did she react? A pause. Then James answered. Not well. That didn't surprise me. What exactly did she say? James flipped through his notes. First, she asked how long verification would take, and I told her that depends entirely on the accuracy of the submitted documents. I laughed, because that answer was perfect. Legally accurate, and terrifying for anyone hiding something. James continued. Then she became very interested in who requested the verification. I already knew. Me. Correct. And then? Another pause. Then James said something that made my stomach tighten. She asked if we'd discovered anything unusual. The room went still. Those exact words, almost exactly. I stood up slowly. Because innocent people don't ask that question. They ask what documents are needed. They ask how long the process takes. They ask what happens next. They do not ask whether you've found anything unusual. That question only comes from someone worried there might be something to find. James spoke again. There's more. Of course, there was. There always is. 1 hour after our call ended, someone attempted to access several corporate records. I froze. Who, we don't know yet. But the requests originated through an attorney. Now things were getting interesting. Very interesting. Because that meant Vanessa wasn't just worried, she was scrambling. Trying to figure out how much we knew. Trying to identify the threat. Trying to stay ahead of a problem she couldn't see. And for the first time since this began, she wasn't in control anymore. Over the next week, everything accelerated. Michael uncovered additional financial records. James expanded the legal review. And the deeper we dug, the uglier things became. By Friday, we had confirmation that Horizon Business Ventures wasn't just connected to failed businesses. It was connected to multiple investigations. Nothing criminal had stuck yet. But the pattern was obvious. Investors, promises, transfers, business failures, disappearing funds, repeat again, and again, and again, the same playbook, different victims, different companies, same result. The realization made me furious. Not because of the money, because of Ethan. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a partner in the scheme. He was the bait, the face, the dreamer, the person investors trusted, and he had absolutely no idea. That thought kept me awake most nights. Because eventually, I would have to tell him. Eventually, I would have to show him everything. And no parent wants to be the person who destroys their child's image of someone they love. Even when it's necessary. Especially when it's necessary. The call came the following Monday. Not from Vanessa, from Michael. And the moment I heard his voice, I knew something major had happened. Richard, What is it? We found Daniel. I sat upright. Vanessa's brother, the man behind Horizon. What about him? Michael exhaled. Then he delivered the sentence that changed everything. Federal investigators have been watching him for nearly 2 years. My pulse quickened. What? They already have an open file. The room suddenly felt smaller. You're serious? Very? I gripped the phone tighter. Do they know about Vanessa? Not yet. And Ethan? No. I closed my eyes. Because I finally understood what we were dealing with. This wasn't a family dispute. This wasn't a dishonest investment. This was potentially something much bigger. Something serious enough to attract federal attention. And if we moved incorrectly, Ethan could get dragged into it, even if he was innocent. That could not happen. I wouldn't allow it, no matter what it cost. That night, I sat on the back porch with Linda. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Eventually, she asked the question we'd both been avoiding. When are you telling him? I stared into the darkness. Ethan, she nodded. Very soon, Linda sighed. He's going to be devastated. I know he loves her. I know. The silence returned. Then I said something I hadn't admitted out loud before. I think he's the biggest victim in all of this. Linda looked away, because she knew I was right, and that's what hurt the most. The next morning, I called Ethan and asked him to come to my house alone. No Vanessa, no explanations, just him. The silence on the phone told me he already knew something was wrong. What he didn't know was that within the next hour, his entire marriage was about to fall apart. The next morning, I called Ethan at exactly 8:15. He answered immediately. Dad, I need you to come over. A pause. Everything okay? No. The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. Then he asked quietly, Mum, she's fine. Another pause. Then, what's wrong? I took a deep breath. I need you here, alone. The word alone changed everything. I could hear it in his voice. What do you mean alone? Don't bring Vanessa. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally he said, Dad, what's going on? I'll explain when you get here. Then I hung up. 45 minutes later, Ethan pulled into the driveway. He got out of his truck looking exhausted, like a man who hadn't slept well in weeks. The moment he walked through the front door, Linda hugged him. Longer than usual, long enough for him to notice. That made him nervous. I could see it immediately. Dad, kitchen. He followed me. The same kitchen where he'd first shown me the business plan. The same table where he'd shared his dream. The same table where that dream was about to collide with reality. Ethan sat down. I placed a thick folder in front of him. He stared at it. Then looked at me. What is this? I sat across from him. The truth, his face tightened. Dad. Just listen. For the next hour, I walked him through everything. Every document, every account, every hidden ownership percentage, every connection between Vanessa and Horizon Business Ventures. Every report Michael had uncovered, every legal finding James had documented. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't speculate. I simply showed him the facts, page after page. Evidence after evidence, proof after proof. At first, Ethan looked confused, then skeptical, then concerned, then pale, very pale. Halfway through the folder, he stopped reading. His hands were shaking. No. I remained silent. No. His voice cracked this time. No, that's impossible. I hated what came next, because every parent hates hurting their child, even when the truth demands it. Ethan, no. He pushed back from the table. This is wrong. I wish it was. Vanessa wouldn't do this. I looked down at the documents, then explained them. He couldn't, because the paperwork didn't lie. The signatures didn't lie. The ownership records didn't lie. And the bank filings definitely didn't lie. For several minutes he said nothing. Then he picked up one page, stared at it, and whispered, She never told me this existed. I knew exactly which page he was holding. The reserve account. The account Vanessa had accidentally referenced during dinner. The account designed to receive investor money. My money. His eyes moved across the page again, then again, then again, as if reading it enough times might somehow change the words. It didn't. Finally he looked up. His eyes were red. When did you find out? I answered honestly. Months ago. The hurt on his face hit harder than I expected. You knew, I suspected, and you didn't tell me. I nodded. I needed proof first. He looked away, angry, confused, heartbroken, all at once. Then something happened. Something I wasn't expecting. Instead of defending Vanessa, he started connecting the dots. You said 40%. Yes. And Horizon owns 35. Correct? His breathing became heavier. That means, I nodded. She controlled 75% of the company. The realization hit him like a truck, because now he understood. The company he'd built, the company he'd worked for, the company he'd sacrificed for, was never truly his, not from the beginning. And someone had made sure of that. An hour later, Ethan stood by the kitchen window, staring outside. Neither Linda nor I interrupted him. Some pain needs silence. Some truths need space. Eventually he spoke. Without turning around, did she ever love me? The question broke my heart. Because no report can answer that. No lawyer can answer that. No accountant can answer that. I chose my words carefully. I think she loved what you could give her. He closed his eyes. I could see it. The memories, the holidays, the vacations, the late-night conversations, the wedding, all being re-examined through a completely different lens. Then he asked another question. Were they going to take the money? I answered immediately. Yes. No point softening it. No point pretending. The evidence was overwhelming. He nodded slowly, almost like he expected that answer now. Then he turned around, for the first time all day. I saw anger. Real anger. Not sadness. Not confusion, anger. What happens next? I exchanged a glance with Linda. Then I answered, that depends on you. He frowned. What do you mean? I opened another folder. The legal folder. James's folder. The authorities are already interested in Daniel. Ethan's eyes widened. What? I nodded. Investigators have been watching him. The room became quiet. Very quiet. Then Ethan asked, do they know about Vanessa? Not yet. And if they find out? I didn't answer immediately, because the answer was ugly. They'll investigate everyone connected to the operation. His face tightened, including him. That realization landed hard, because suddenly this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival. Protecting his future. Protecting his reputation. Protecting the business he'd poured his life into. Finally, Ethan sat down again and said something that told me exactly who he was. I want to cooperate. Linda started crying. Not loudly, just quietly, because in that moment she realized something important. Despite everything, despite the lies, despite the manipulation, despite the heartbreak, our son was still our son. Honest, decent, strong. 3 days later, everything exploded. Investigators executed search warrants. Financial records were seized. Accounts were frozen. Attorneys started making phone calls, and for the first time, Vanessa realized she wasn't dealing with a naive investor anymore. She was dealing with evidence. And evidence doesn't negotiate. That Saturday morning, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Vanessa, I answered. Immediately, there was no warmth in her voice anymore. No performance, no charm, no carefully crafted politeness, just anger. You did this. I leaned back. No, you destroyed everything. Vanessa, you turned Ethan against me. I closed my eyes, because that sentence told me everything. Even now, even after all the evidence, even after the lies, she still saw herself as the victim. I spoke calmly. Ethan saw the truth. Silence. Then she asked a question that genuinely surprised me. How long did you know? I thought about it. Long enough. A bitter laugh came through the phone. The escrow account. Yes. You never intended to transfer the money. No. Another long silence followed. Then she whispered, I almost had it. For a second, I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly, but I had. And with that single sentence, she confessed more than any investigation ever could. I almost had it, not we, not the company. Not Ethan, the money. That's all she'd ever cared about. The money, and she had just admitted it. After the call ended, I thought the story was over. I was wrong, because 2 weeks later, investigators uncovered something hidden inside Vanessa's personal records. Something that revealed the truth about her plan from the very beginning. And when Ethan saw it, his entire world shattered for the second time. 2 weeks after Vanessa's phone call, life had become strangely quiet. Too quiet. The investigations were moving forward. Accounts had been frozen. Lawyers were involved, and Vanessa had moved out of the house she once shared with Ethan. For the first time in months, there were no angry calls, no legal threats, no desperate attempts to explain things away. Just silence. But silence doesn't always mean the story is over. Sometimes it means the final chapter hasn't arrived yet. And ours arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my office when Ethan called. His voice sounded different. Not angry, not sad. Empty, Dad. What's wrong? A long pause. Then he said, "They found something." My stomach tightened. What did they find? Another pause. A letter. An hour later, I met Ethan at James's office. The moment I walked in, I knew whatever they had found was serious. James looked uncomfortable. Michael looked furious, and Ethan looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. A folder sat on the table. I sat down. "What is it?" James slowly opened the file. During a search of Vanessa's financial records, investigators had recovered several private documents. Most were ordinary emails, contracts, notes. But one document stood out, a letter, not handwritten, typed, saved on a laptop, never sent. Never meant to be discovered. Yet there it was. James slid the paper toward me. I started reading. And with every line, my anger grew. The document was nearly 18 months old. Created before Ethan even signed the lease for the furniture company. Before investors were approached. Before the business officially existed. And inside that letter, Vanessa laid out the entire plan. Everything. Not in legal language. Not in business language, plain language, cold language, honest language, the kind liars only use when they think nobody else will ever read it. She described Ethan as trustworthy. Easy to influence, perfect for investor confidence. I felt sick, but it got worse, much worse. Further down, she referred to me directly. His father has substantial retirement assets and a history of supporting family ventures. Not Richard, not Dad, not father, -in-law. An asset, a target, a source of money, nothing more. I looked at Ethan. He was staring at the floor, not moving. Not speaking. I continued reading. Then I reached the sentence that destroyed whatever doubt remained. The long-term objective is securing outside capital through family trust and redirecting operational control through Horizon. There it was, in black and white. No misunderstanding. No confusion. No alternative explanation. It had been planned from the beginning. Every step, every conversation, every smile, every holiday dinner, every family photograph. Everything, part of the plan. The room remained silent for a long time. Eventually, Ethan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "The proposal." I looked up. "What?" "The night I showed you the business plan." He laughed bitterly. A broken laugh. She already knew what she was doing. Nobody answered, because there was nothing to say. He already knew. The evidence was sitting right in front of him. Then he asked the hardest question of all. Was any of it real? Again, the same question. The question every betrayed person eventually asks. Was any of it real? This time, I answered differently, because now we knew more. The business was real. He nodded slowly. The company was real. Another nod. Your dream was real. His eyes filled with tears. I continued. She just attached her plan to it. For the first time all afternoon, Ethan cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The way grown men cry when something inside them finally breaks, Linda always said heartbreak isn't loud, it's silent. It's the moment someone realizes the future they imagined never actually existed. And that's exactly what happened to Ethan. Over the next several months, the legal process continued. Daniel Mercer eventually faced multiple fraud-related charges tied to several separate investigations. Additional victims came forward: investors, retirees, business partners, people who had trusted the wrong people. The pattern investigators suspected for years finally became impossible to ignore. Vanessa was never criminally convicted during that first phase of the investigation, but her role became impossible to defend, especially after the letter surfaced, especially after the financial records matched the plan she had written, and especially after Ethan cooperated fully. The divorce was finalized the following year. Neither of them attended the final hearing in person. It was over before lunch. Just like that. A marriage that once looked perfect, gone. But this story doesn't end there. Because unlike most stories involving betrayal, this one had something rare: a second chance. The furniture company survived. Actually, it thrived. Once the hidden ownership structures were removed, once the finances were cleaned up, once honest people were running it, the business grew faster than anyone expected. Turns out, Ethan had been right all along. The idea was good. The market was real. The customers were real. The dream was real. The problem had never been the business. The problem had been the people surrounding it. Nearly a year later, Ethan invited Linda and me to visit the manufacturing facility. A much larger facility than the one he'd started with. As I walked through the building, I watched employees working. Orders being packed, machines running, customers arriving. Everything felt different, healthy, honest, earned. Then Ethan led me toward the entrance. Above the main showroom hung a new sign, a sign I'd never seen before. I stopped walking. The sign read, "Bennett & Son, Custom Furniture." I looked at him. He smiled. A real smile. The first completely genuine smile I'd seen in a very long time. "I wanted you to see it first." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because suddenly I remembered that Sunday afternoon. The laptop, the business plan, the excitement in his eyes, the dream, the one that almost got stolen, almost. I put my hand on his shoulder. "You built this." He shook his head. "No." Then he looked at me. "You protected it." That evening we sat together in the showroom after everyone had gone home. The building was quiet. Sunlight poured through the windows. And for the first time in nearly 2 years, everything felt right. Ethan raised a glass. "To family." I picked mine up. But before we drank, I said something I'd learned the hard way. "To paying attention." He smiled. Linda laughed. And together we raised our glasses. Not because we had won, not because someone else had lost, but because the truth had finally won, and sometimes, that's enough. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more family drama. At what point revenge did you realize Vanessa and shocking real-life betrayals? And remember, let me know, trust in the comments. Valuable, but verification is priceless.